As everybody know, today is election day, and we have to elect the next president. And why do we do that? Because we want somebody who can serve for the people and who can tackle all those difficulty problems. So being a president is a tough job. Same goes for entrepreneurs. Starting your own company is extremely difficult, especially as a female founder. So today I'm going to introduce Charvi Shetty, the founder and CEO of Knox Medical Diagnostics, a portable spirometer with a mobile interface that objectively tracks asthma severities to allow for a personalized and real-time action plan. Ms. Shari graduated from Cal with a degree in bioengineering. Go Bears. And then she finished her master's degree at UCSF in biomedical engineering, biomedical imaging. Then she entered into the industry working in genetech. After that, she started her own company. According to her Medium post, I have chosen, quote, I've chosen the startup life because my neuroscience research at UCSF was too slow and wouldn't impact people's life in my lifetime. While the biotech industry life working at genetech left me feeling like a small cog in a large wheel. So she wants to be the change maker and help people improve their life and empower people to take control of their health. Now let us welcome Ms. Charvi Shetty.
Welcome. Thank you for having me. So of all the speakers that we've had so far this semester, Charvi is the one who sat in your seat the most recently.
I took this class actually in my sophomore year back in 2009.
So Charvi assures me that she remembers every single one of her speakers. Not, but she did say at the end of the semester it was pretty inspiring. So I am wondering actually if you can take us back a little bit. So often it's nice to talk about your journey a little bit, and then talk about the industry that you're in and some thoughts that are of what's going forward. But I just want to pull you back. A number of our students here have actually come from overseas, and so I'm kind of curious. Before you even came to Cal, I think you were in the Philippines. I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about your decision to even come to Cal and some things that might have been formative as you were growing up.
Yeah, so I believe that a lot of my background and my upbringing is what shaped me to who I am today. Like for instance, everything about growing up in my family was very non-traditional. I lived in 4 different countries. I was born in India, I lived in the Philippines, then Uganda, and then I finally moved here to California. So
were you going to school in each of those?
Yes. So especially I grew up went to a Catholic school in India and went to a Muslim school in Uganda and then went to a public schools over here. So it was a big change. So I think part of the reason for that is because my mom really wanted to question everything, not just accept things for the way they are. She wanted us to think differently. So even in growing up, she wanted me and my brother to be very, very open-minded. And she felt like the only way to truly do that is by fully immersing yourself into a different culture. And this couldn't be achieved by just visiting a place. You have to live in that place to actually be able to understand everything about that.
So was she working in the different places? That's so interesting to be in such different countries.
Right, so my mom is a nurse and my dad is a businessman. So I guess that's part of the reason why I even chose bioengineering. I wanted to mix the two, the science and medical background as well as the business route.
Oh,
so even in high school, I took the biotechnology magnet program. And then even in choosing my major year at Berkeley, I chose bioengineering mainly because I could either go into one of 2 different routes, go into the pre-med route to become a doctor, or also into the business world, getting an MBA afterwards, mainly because bioengineering is an area with a lot of emerging technologies.
Right.
So I knew that there's a lot of room for innovation in this field.
So it sounds like, certainly your upbringing constantly made you question things and a lot of new things were exposed. How did you decide to come to Cal?
So actually, in a lot of the other schools that I picked, I chose a neuroscience kind of background and neuroscience concentration.
Yeah.
But Berkeley was the only one where I applied as an engineer. I thought that would be a major challenge for me because I wanted to immerse myself into bioengineering. I guess like even in high school, I took like the biotechnology pathway. I wanted to be able to get a hand in terms of like building something that's very tangible, so then it could directly impact people's lives.
So, it's been a while, obviously, since I'm talking about my suit from the 90s, since I've been in high school, but I don't know a lot of high schools that have a biotechnology pathway. Was this a different high school or?
So, I mean, I'm not, so like in different high schools around my region, there were different magnet programs depending on what you wanted to focus upon. So the biotechnology magnet program was a 3-year course where you fully immerse yourself into like different fields within biotechnology.
What was it about biotechnology that drew you?
So what fully drew me into that was that it's a very, very new field. So there's things about them, like for instance, they're talking about genetic engineering, tissue engineering, that really, really fascinated me. Any like basically any science that's very relatively uncharted is something that deeply fascinates me, because I wanted to immerse myself in a region where there's a lot more to be discovered, and I wanted to be part of that journey.
So was there any teacher that was particularly inspirational? I mean, I can just imagine, frankly, as a girl who's grown up in all these different places, all of a sudden doing this tissue sampling and in the labs, it must have been kind of challenging without a sponsor, in a sense. So
I guess in that regard, when I first entered Berkeley, I remember meeting Amy Her, who's one of my professors from the Bio E 192 class.
She'll be speaking next semester.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. Oh, she's the one, actually, she's the one who hosted the class where this company and this idea even started from. So seeing her as an example, someone who's like, I thought she was actually one of the students in that class when she was sitting down.
Can you talk about Amy a little bit, like what it was from her background? So she has the Her Lab?
Yeah, so I took her class, Bio E 192, and I learned that her background was in mechanical engineering. So she went to Stanford for undergrad and her PhD. And then she took the design classes, the mechanical design classes over there, and wanted to translate the learnings from that school to here. So I was one of the first students to ever take the capstone course. And I believe that's a I enjoyed her way of thinking in terms of not just building solutions for the sake of building solutions, but really delving into the clinical needs behind that, trying to figure out that, and then building a solution after you do that process.
Can you talk about one of your projects that you worked on with her, or maybe not, where you actually had to think about what the clinical need was? Just take us through that. So as we're kind of thinking about whether it is a bioengineering or biosciences, that process is similar.
Yep, exactly. So like in the Bio E 192 class, it was a UCSF clinician who presented us with the problem behind asthma in terms of either monitoring or predicting asthma. So he introduced us to a lot of clinicians, nurses, and respiratory therapists for us to learn more about the clinical needs behind it. And then after that, I also interviewed a lot of my friends, a lot of my college friends I later found out used to have asthma as children. And I also learned that my college roommate at the time suffered from a very, very severe form of asthma. I always wondered like why she wasn't as outgoing, like she wasn't willing to try a lot of new experiences. And after speaking with her, I learned that it's because her parents, when she was younger, didn't really let her go outside of the house. And the main reason for that being that there were a lot of triggers outside the home that would lead to an asthma attack for her. So she was telling me that rather than remembering things like going to Disneyland, her childhood memories were filled with visits to the ER or being hospitalized. And so I guess like even from speaking to a lot of my friends, I learned that the solution that they were using 20 years ago is still the solution that people and kids are using today.
So for people who don't have asthma, can you talk about what that solution has been?
Yeah, so right now, kids and parents typically rely on your symptoms like coughing or wheezing. But the problem with that is that by the time those symptoms appear, it's often too late and you end up being hospitalized or going to the ER. But I learned from speaking with a lot of clinicians that there does exist a technology to capture a problem way before you even present yourself with symptoms, like visible symptoms, which can be caught several days or even weeks beforehand.
Can you talk about, you said you learned that from clinicians?
Mm-hmm.
So you say that kind of easily, but it seems to me that you would have had to do a lot of research, or, I mean, how did you get in front of all these clinicians? How were these clinicians even willing to talk to you?
So part of the reason was because I was still a student. So a lot of doctors and even like people at UCSF were very, very willing to speak with the students. So I used that opportunity to do so. And actually in one of the classes at UCSF, I think Stephanie's class over there, it was a Lean Launchpad class in which part of the course was to interview at least 100 people during that 8-week time span. And so even the mentors and teachers in that class helped introduce us to a lot of the clinicians.
So Steve Blank and Stephanie, I think we're both teaching the Lean Launchpad, and that is, people think that they've like talked to two people and they know what they want to do, but it is really important to, they force you to go out and talk to people. And then when you've talked to people, they force you to go out and talk to more people. So.
Yep, exactly. So we had to do at least 10 interviews per week. And I think one of the other groups in our cohort that wasn't able to do that was kicked out of the class promptly.
Ooh, cool.
Yeah, well, good or bad.
So it sounds like all the different projects you're working on have had quite a bit of success. You have a lot of papers that you presented at different conferences. Can you talk about something that didn't work out the way you thought it might work out? Or you wanted it to work out?
Well, yeah, so let's see, there's several different things. So for instance, even in the product development phase, when you first started off, we had a spacer, which is something that helps deliver medication, and then a nitric oxide level detector, which is like a biomarker in exhale breath, and
this
a
is the product development for the asthma?
For monitoring and potentially predicting asthma.
Okay.
So that's what we started off with, because we wanted to combine a whole bunch of different solutions into something that could greatly impact people's lives. However, it turned out, like for instance, the nitric oxide level detection portion was not a valid science. Like during the Lean Launchpad class, when I spoke to an asthma and allergy specialist, she said that she was actually blacklisted by Blue Cross and Blue Shield for even collecting that information from her patients without even charging the insurance company for that. Uh-huh. So that's something that we quickly learned. And in addition, when we were speaking with families, we realized that the most important thing for them was for the device and the solution to be very portable. So that, therefore, we scrapped the spacer aspect of it, mainly because it added a lot of bulk into the product. So we focused on just one tiny thing.
So you're talking about we. Who is the we, and how did you get to the we?
Right, so one of my co-founders is here, Hyson. And the other person who also, I'm helping us produce all of this company, is my other co-founder, Indy. So we met through mutual friends. Like Hyson, I met through a snowboarding trip back in undergrad, and I realized that he lived 2 blocks away from me when I was at UCSF.
So Hyson was an EECS, studied EECS, so that's so helpful.
Yes, exactly. So I met him mainly through my best friend. My best friend was in the same engineering community as him, and then she told me that if I wanted a software engineer to work with me, there's no more talented engineer than Hyson. And then so I quickly grabbed him, and he was bored at his old job anyway, so we started working together. I
am curious, where was your old job?
I used to work at an enterprise e-commerce company that's not doing so well now, so a lot I left when I did.
So basically, that was a lot of pressure on you probably to pull him away from a paying job, maybe not? No?
So I think, especially for both of my co-founders, the money isn't truly what motivates them. Both him and Indy both used to have asthma as kids, and so they deeply know the direct impact on your life because of that. In addition, it's something that's actually motivating, I believe, especially for both of them, to work for a good cause and something that actually improves the quality of people's lives rather than just working for money.
So we haven't had people who've been talking, we haven't had people talking about medical hardware or doing something in the sciences. So how does that work? As you're doing the Lean Launchpad class, you have a group that's working on the class with you. What happens from the time that you finish that class to when you actually are founding the company? Or was that part of the, what happened?
I guess it was sequenced off in a different way. So it was only after I took a lot of the entrepreneurship courses that I realized that, yes, there is a sustainable business model around this idea. And so right after I finished those classes, that was while I was working actually at Genentech.
Yeah.
And after I finished the last course, I decided to stop working at Genentech. And shortly after, that's when I met Indy at a hackathon here at Berkeley for like a diagnostic by design hackathon. We created a working prototype over the course of a weekend, and we won the hackathon. And because of that, we were recognized by the founder at Citrus here. So they gave us some money as well as space, as well as mentorship. And so that allowed us to at least build a working prototype.
So since it's so recent, so it gave us, you got some money. So you can certainly tell me like when to stop, but I think it is interesting for everybody to know. So like, what do you do with that money? Like besides, pay your back rent? I mean, how do you use that, or how are you supposed to use that?
We were mainly using that for a lot of product development. Like, for instance, the founder at Citrus, it gives you enough money to just build a prototype. But after that, like once you have a working prototype, we were working still with some clinicians at UCSF. They applied for a grant, and what they used the money for was mainly to run a validation study to validate that our spirometer was as accurate as a hospital spirometer.
You said you'd brought something. Do you happen to have a prototype?
Oh,
or?
yeah.
So that's not the, is that the prototype?
Yep, this is the prototype.
Okay.
Working prototype. So like the way that spirometry works is that you blow into it, and what you measure is the velocity, the airflow velocity. And once you measure the airflow velocity over a given duration of time, you can know your lung volume. And what's really important about this is that it can measure the degree of airway tract obstruction in your lungs. And that's that obstruction that can occur way before you have visible symptoms like coughing or wheezing. So monitoring that is something that's analogous to a blood glucose meter for diabetics, in that by looking at your numbers over time, you can know how to act upon it.
So it's not just that though, that's connected to some other things, right?
Yep, it's connected to a mobile app. And since we're targeting kids, we made a game out of it. So as you breathe in and out of this device, you navigate a hot air balloon and you travel to new destinations every day.
So can you show that at all? Is that possible somehow?
Yes. Okay, yeah.
So when you were doing your prototype coming out of Citrus, did you have all that as part of it or not?
We just had this working.
Okay. And
so,
it's already turning green.
Oh, right. Let's see if this.
Isn't it interesting? That seems to be the same color that was used in that drinking bottle last week. Oh, now it's blue.
Okay. I don't know how you can see my, I guess I can show you. So can you everyone see this?
There's a hot air balloon on this on that screen.
Can you see this, kind of, ish? So, hold on. Oh, it is off.
We are on Facebook Live. I hope no one thinks that you're having an asthma attack or something.
Hold on. So as you blow in and out of the device, you basically navigate a hot air balloon. And the main goal and the part that we collect spirometry is when you exhale really hard for a really long time. So I'm going to skip to that part. This device, I think, is
And
not.
so anybody can do this anytime during the day, right?
Yes. So the point is to measure preferably once in the morning before you take your medication and once after to see how efficacious it is, and to also monitor your health every single day, just like a blood glucose meter. I'm going to skip to the blast.
Did it go up?
Yep. And so once you blow into it, sorry, it's a okay. So once you blast out into the atmosphere, you can also use your points to buy new things, like new hot air balloons, like that.
So it's very
Your story about a new place.
it's very focused on children.
Yes.
Why did you? I mean, children and adults have asthma. What was it? Why did you decide to focus on children?
So although kids only encompass a quarter of the total asthmatic population, they're the ones who are the driver of hospital visits and ER visits. So they account for nearly half of them.
Okay.
So that's why I decided to focus on them, because they're the ones who greatly need it.
Because this is so preventative, what would make you want to expand it beyond children?
So I think that the same exact technology is currently used for adults as well as people with cystic fibrosis and also COPD. So we would want to expand to that because although children are our initial focus, we want to be able to help anyone with other respiratory diseases.
So I don't know if you all have seen all those COPD ads on TV where the elephant's sitting on somebody's chest. I'm probably the right age group for it, so I see those ads a lot. That could help. This could help that too.
Yes. So spirometry is actually also used to track the disease progression for COPD patients.
So when you think about your company, it's called Knox Diagnostics. And Aeris is actually this device that's focused on children, is that correct?
Yes.
And so it seems like you're setting yourself up to be able to have a couple of different lines because of Knox. Tell us about Knox, how that came as a name.
Knox, well, originally we had nitric oxide detection as part of this device, and so that's how Knox came about. But since then, we've dropped the nitric oxide component, so.
What made you decide to drop that?
So like I mentioned earlier, it's after speaking with that asthma and allergy specialist who was blacklisted by the insurance company.
That's right. So you kind of had to know, like, ooh, maybe that's not the way to go. This is the right way to go. I think that you started the company in 2000 and is it
12?
It was 12? And then when did you get more? So you got some funding from Citrus. What happened then?
So after the Citrus funding, which was like just $5,000, we got a $60K award or a grant from UCSF. And then earlier this year, we received $250K from SOS Ventures through IndieBio, which is a biotech accelerator in San Francisco. And then most recently, we also received funding from Bolt Ventures. So it's a Boston-based venture capital firm. And so now we're in the Pier 9 location.
So when you received that funding, we had Mar Hershenson and Paige Mamar who told us all a little bit about venture capital and what happens as you're going through the process and pitching to companies. How did you all get in front of these companies? What was the process?
So it was actually the way we got Bolt was someone saw me speak at IndieBio. So we always have like pitch practices. And so one of the people in the audience at the time is an investor. And so he's an investor mainly in the food industry, but he knew people in the hardware sector, VC firms in that area. So then he called up his friend, asked her to come over to IndieBio, and then we started having that initial conversation. And then, so it was mainly through introductions.
So how often do you do these kind of pitches? Or I know you've been presenting papers. How often do you focus on that?
So it goes through cycles. So it depends on whether I'm fundraising or not fundraising.
Okay.
So especially the focus for IndieBio was to build up for demo day. So at that point, we had to practice every single month.
Oh, so you did, and you were presenting things every single month, so you're out there all the time. And so you're saying that you still are over at Cal quite a bit, and I imagine you're at UCSF quite a bit also. When you come back, what are you doing when you're talking to people, or why do you come back?
So the main reason I come back here to UC Berkeley is because one of my mentors is Patrick Scoglia from the Foundry at Citrus program. So he continues to advise me even after the incubator ended. So that's the main reason that I come back.
So it seems like you've got your prototype. You have this. I am kind of curious. When did you officially launch Aeris?
We haven't launched yet. So we're still waiting for FDA approval.
And so I hear that can take years, and maybe 5 years would be fast. What's the process? What's the prognosis?
So right now we're getting ready to submit our pre-sub, which is like a pre-submission application under the 510K pathway as a Class 2 medical device. And so we should hear back in about 2 months or so with questions in regards to what kind of exact testing we need to do. And then after that, since it's just a Class 2 with like a predicate device, it'll be 3 months at soonest until we get clearance for the product.
And often I hear that people have to test things outside the U.S. because it's incredibly hard to do samples here. Is that the same for Aeris, or?
So since it's a Class 2 device with a predicate, we only have to do benchtop testing. But the UCSF study, like the validation study, was the main reason that we got some accuracy data for 80 kids.
Okay, for 80.
Yep.
That was your set. And are those 80 kids still using the device?
So that's a one-time use. It's a comparison of the hospital's barometer versus ours in a different order, just to see how our device compares with the hospital device.
So it sounds like you'll hear questions in 2 months, and then it'll be still a while. You'll have to work on
3
things.
months.
What is your hope for the time frame now? We're sitting, November of 2016. How do you look? What are you hoping for in the next year, the next 3 years?
And so we anticipate getting FDA clearance in the spring of next year, and then launching towards the fall of next year. So being able to sell the product towards the end of next year.
What do you have to think about when you're selling this type of a product?
So the most important thing for us is that the product works well and very, very well, and it's actually loved by a lot of people. So that's why even before we start selling, we're already engaging with a lot of families. So like you mentioned that you know Colleen. So Colleen's son is the one who's been the first alpha tester for our product.
I looked on Charvi's website, and there was a friend of mine in a picture. So I was like, oh, all right. I didn't even know she was doing that. And and in the meantime, how many people are working on with you? Is it just the 3 of you? Or?
So right now there's 4 people. So it's me, Hyson, Indy, and also Yufei. And he's a mechanical engineer, mainly making sure that everything will be manufacturable.
So 3 of you are Cal grads, right?
Yes.
And 4th?
The 4th is from Cal Poly, but he's the younger brother of my best friend, also from Berkeley.
Oh, okay. So like few.
So I mean, he's someone who also used to work at Apple.
Yeah.
And so my best friend told him that rather than going back to Apple, he should just work for a startup.
So, I mean, everybody is constantly thinking, what do I do? Do I go work for a big company like Apple or Genentech or the company that what you were working for? Do you have any thoughts on what would you recommend if you had to do it again? What would you do differently, or what's the benefit of working at a larger company versus what you're doing now?
Right. So I think for me, what I need to do before I decide something, I usually try it. So for instance, I knew early on within Berkeley that I didn't want to go the pre-med route, so I just scrapped that. And then I was more interested in the.
How did you know that? Just curious.
I just didn't feel like I could make a direct impact also as being a doctor.
You can't say that maybe you failed a class, nothing like that, huh?
No, I didn't fail any classes at Berkeley. But I mean, I think I just didn't, it wasn't my passion. Like, I learned from speaking to other doctors that they were dissatisfied because there's still a lot of bureaucratic issues that go within the hospital system. I actually also learned that from speaking to my friends who are residents at like UCSF or things like that. And I was more interested in the engineering aspect. Shortly after coming to Berkeley, I realized I was more interested in building physical products as well. So I wanted to go into, first of all, like the more research route in neuroscience, because that's what I applied for in all the other schools. Yeah. And I quickly learned that at UCSF that a lot of my research wouldn't directly impact people's lives during my lifetime, or would take several decades before it actually saw any kind of impact. So I tried that and realized that's not something that I wanted to do at that moment. I explored industry while working at Genentech. And while it was a company that produced a lot of tangible products in terms of that it creates a therapeutic for people and it actually is in the hands of people right now, I felt like when I was working there, my work wasn't making a direct impact into people's lives. So I wanted to work on something where there was more of a direct impact. And the only way to do that, I believed, was to create my own company. So even while I was at Genentech, I openly told my manager that this is something that I want to explore. He encouraged me, he actually supported me. And he mentioned that there's no better time for me to explore this while I had relatively few commitments. Like I wasn't married, don't have kids, so I have nothing to lose. So I decided to try it.
And actually, I mean, a medical device, I mean, this has huge hurdles. And the companies that sell devices are, Johnson & Johnson or Genentech, or what would your goal be? Do you want to keep, what's your goal for this? To sell it to a larger company, or what do you think?
So I want to build an enterprise because just because we're focusing on the respiratory field initially, that's not where I want to end. I want to build a company that directly helps improve people's lives. And I believe that there's other chronic diseases that can benefit from technologies that are trapped in the hospital, but can be placed into the hands of people at home so that you're actually in control.
Are you allowed to talk about what other things you're thinking about?
We don't know yet. We'll try to figure it out on the way.
Oh, interesting.
But we're focusing on just the first product now.
And you were talking about some of the different machines that you have or that you have access to. What does your office look like?
So we're currently sharing a space in the Autodesk space, so like in Pier 9. Mm-hmm. So we have access
San Francisco?
In San Francisco, it's like right next to the Exploratorium, right really close by to the ferry building. So we have access to like water jets, massive 3D printers, as well as laser cutters. Basically, all of the prototyping tools we need to utilize before we actually go into full-scale manufacturing.
So I mean, I know that you, I don't know if you still do it, but I know that at some point that you skied or snowboard, sorry, like wasn't skiing or snowboard, whichever one. But you have this vision of people who are, and entrepreneurs who've come and talked, who are like, they're sleeping at the office, it's 24/7. You all don't look that tired. What's your day-to-day like?
So I mean,
maybe I'm lying. Maybe you do look tired.
Hyson is tired, but usually for me, I think what really helps me wake up in the morning and also stay up at night working is just being able to work directly with kids. So it's just like every single Thursday and Friday now, we've been at UCSF directly interacting with kids for this 500 subject study that we have there. And just seeing that they actually like using it and then it can actually have a health impact as stated by their parents is what drives us, like seeing that our product actually works. And
so that's what you're doing on Fridays?
This week, Thursday, because of Veterans
What are you doing
Day.
over the weekend?
Not sure yet. Not entirely sure yet.
But do you feel like you have time for yourself? I mean, it's a pretty busy time, so I'm just kind of curious and trying to level set with everybody. Kind of, what is the time commitment?
Especially when we're at IndieBio, I know that we're working every single day, including weekends, because we're working on the product, like this engineering side, on the weekdays, and on the weekends, we're delivering the product. So this weekend might entail me going to the families, but I don't consider work to be like really work. It's because it's something that I actually enjoy. But to balance it out, like a couple of weeks ago, I was in Zion for a week, and yeah, so I mean, I do take breaks for myself, and I encourage my co-founders and my teammates to do the same.
Do you take breaks together?
We always do our retreat in Colorado. Well, we're going again, I think. Yeah, no, we're going this again in February.
Because you think that you're spending 24/7 together. Maybe you don't want to go away together, but it sounds like you do.
But the company retreat. I mean, all of us are friends first. So I knew all of them, all of my co-founders and also Yufei as friends before we started working together.
So people talk about the importance of shared values with your co-founders or very diverse set of skills. Can you talk about the different skills of your co-founders and how it seems to work despite the fact that you're also Cal related?
Yeah, so I mean, technically all of us have background in engineering, but I don't feel like any of us are just strongly just purely engineers. Like for instance, for me, like when I first started, I didn't really have a background in like CADing for mechanical engineering, but we needed that expertise on the team, so I learned from my friends. And then more recently, like we had to be more engaged in the design side of things, so I was involved with that, and so was Hyson. And then none of us have a background in business, so we just learned from gaining that experience and mentorship from our advisors. So it's something that
But your advisors aren't necessarily business advisors, are they?
So Patrick Scoglia, who's a former CTO of HP, and he also advises a lot of different startups, so he has a background in business. One of my other mentors is Alan May, so he started up, and he was a chairman or the CEO for like 50 different medtech companies. Yeah. So they usually do. Yep.
But you don't feel the need that you have to go back and get your MBA or something like that?
I feel like I'm learning a lot more by actually doing things as a startup rather than something that I would be learning in a classroom in an MBA program.
I mean, I think it's so clever that you all also have this marketing where the kids can see their balloon going up or down. How did that idea come about? That doesn't seem like, we were in the 3D room and looking at Yodas. It doesn't seem, it's not like Yoda going up and down. It's a hot air balloon. How did that come up?
So I actually pretended to be a nanny at Finn School. So I went there with an idea and concept of you being on a hoverboard and dodging skyscrapers and clouds. But one of the kids told me that, what if I run out of breath? And I later realized that he actually had asthma. So that's why he was afraid of just being forced to dodge obstacles. So then I drew out something on a piece of paper a hot air balloon where you go down to collect some coins and go back up as a relaxed breathing kind of phase. And then the only way to get to the next level was to blast out into the atmosphere. And so when I did that and drew that out on a piece of paper, several kids demonstrated. And then they were like, is this how you do it? And they took a deep breath in and exhaled forcefully, which is what the spirometry maneuver asks and requests for.
Right.
So it was after I saw that insight that we switched our idea from the hoverboard to something that's more relaxed, like a hot air balloon.
Oh, interesting. How did the hoverboard idea even come about? Even the hoverboard, even though you changed it?
The hoverboard idea, I think we looked at several different games online and just saw like what involved going up and down. And so that was one of the things that we encountered.
If you were to go back and, all those 4 years ago, or is it 4 years? Yeah, 4 years ago, a little over, and give yourself some advice, or if you had advice for these students who are interested in going into their own different areas of entrepreneurship or innovation, what are some 2 or 3 things that you might tell them?
Yeah, I think the most important thing.
Tell them? The
most important thing for me was to have be supported by a very close group of, I guess, advisors as well as mentors. So initially, when I first started this company, I received a lot of support from my family as well as my friends. They kept on encouraging me to try this out. And then afterwards, I gained a lot of advisors and mentors from my classes as well as incubators and accelerators. And it's really them who I reach out to when I'm unsure about things. So I guess just being surrounded by people who can constantly encourage you, because their belief in me is more encouraging than my belief in myself. So that's what I would recommend.
One thing that's interesting for you all to know about Charvi is that when you write her, she gets back to you immediately. And Professor Sidhu had written you recently to ask for something, and you immediately made a connection to talk to somebody else. And I think that when you have that attitude of being open and helping wherever you can, even though your time is obviously very constrained, it makes people more willing to want to help you. So I think that's really interesting about what you're doing. One thing that I am amazed about is, considering you haven't actually launched your product, you've had a lot of press.
Oh yes, yeah.
Why do you think?
I think there's several different things. So I think it's because it's a compelling story. Like, this is something that people are pretty familiar with. Like, usually when I go out to random settings even, people are familiar with asthma. Mm-hmm. And especially when it comes to kids' health, it's something that's also pretty important. And then the third part is we're making something that's not so accessible now, very accessible, in a way that's directly placed into the hands of people, in a way that encourages them to want to use it rather than it being something that's forced upon you. So it's the combination of those factors.
So it is November now. By the time next June comes around, these should be available. Where would they be available?
So initially, it's going to be available through our website and Amazon. So not in June, probably closer to August.
Okay,
Yep.
Good to know. Mm-hmm. So everybody will know. And do you think you'll stay with the name Aeris?
Yes, but we're changing our name from Knox to something else. The company.
Can you talk about that?
No, because we don't know what the name is going to be yet.
Why do you feel like you need to change the name?
We found another Knox Medical and several different other Knox Medicals. So one of them is a cannabis group in Florida, so we don't really want to be associated with that.
I don't know. It might be a positive thing. We'll see how that goes.
Not for a product for kids.
Well, I want to thank you very much for your time, and I want to open it up to everybody here for questions. So I'll ask you to do the same thing again. We'll start over there. If you could just introduce yourself and ask a question, that'd be great.
Yeah. So is this on? Hi, I'm Diana. I'm an interdisciplinary studies major concentrating in bioethics. And I also focus on pediatrics. So that's great. I think my question really concerns how you kind of navigate maybe disagreements within your co-founders and teams, considering they're all really close friends of yours, how that kind of dynamic pans out.
Yeah, it's not all the time that we always agree upon everything. So especially with things like branding, we have very, very opposing and different views. The way we go about doing so, I guess resolving those issues is by having a discussion first. And if we're not able to get to a consensus during that meeting, we take some time outside of that to think about what the other person really had to say, put ourselves in that person's shoes, and then rediscuss at a later point, like the following day. And then all decisions, like even though I'm the CEO, are not just based on what I think is best. It's something that we all have to come together with a consensus, at least among the 3 co-founders.
Charvi, we had a speaker last week who talked a little bit about it shouldn't be split 30, whatever, a third. Are you able to tell us a little bit about how your company is split?
Yeah, we're split basically a third.
There you go.
So, oh yeah, I have like 1% more than Hyson. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Alex. I'm intended EECS major, and I was wondering, it seems like the past 12 months, there's been a big specter hanging over the healthcare startup industry in San Francisco with Theranos, like collapsing in a big way. I was wondering what your thoughts on Theranos were and how, like, as a medical device company you were dealing with, having the name of Silicon Valley Biotech be like dominated by this trickery.
So one of the things I think that Theranos failed to do was to have like a strong medical backing behind it. And so the way that we've always approached it is that we wanted to ensure that there's medical accuracy first and foremost. And that's why we have an official collaboration with UCSF. So we have that medical credibility and those doctors continuously collaborating with us, and they wouldn't approve something if it's not actually medically relevant.
Hi, thank you for coming. My name is William. I'm a junior business student. I was wondering a little bit more about, one, why you're picking Amazon and your website to be the primary channel of distribution, and then two, can you talk about some of the branding conflicts you guys have and what your vision for branding is?
Yeah, so like for instance, Amazon, the way that came about was because we asked parents, like the families that are currently using Aeris right now, what are the avenues that they would take to actually purchase a product like this? And they mentioned things like Amazon because they wanted to see reviews and see what other people had to say. So if it wasn't coming from their doctor, they would want to make it easily accessible. And in terms of branding, so like it was similar to the creation of the name for Aeris. Whenever I create like a product or like our team creates a product, I want some kind of significance to go behind the name. So that's how I feel about even the name for the company. And one of my other co-founders disagrees and thinks that it should just be a name that is catchy and is memorable. Like for instance, for Aeris, the reason why it's called Aeris is because it has a root air, AER, which means atmosphere and air. And the whole concept for the game is that you're navigating the skies and blasting through the atmosphere. So I wanted a similar kind of sentiment to go behind the name of the company as well.
Real quick follow-up. Is this on? Yeah. Real quick follow-up on the Amazon. Are there competing products that people are already consciously going to look for? Something similar like this on Amazon, so they would look something up and then your product would come up? Because if people don't know that such a thing exists, they will never even look it up on Amazon.
Exactly. So that's why we're trying, like if you type in spirometer on Amazon, you'll find some spirometers on there. So we think that the people who want to purchase our product will actively be wanting to purchase this product. It's not something that they'll, I guess, buy impulsively.
Hi, over here. Okay, my name is Stephanie. I'm a CS major. I'm just curious about the product and how it works, and how does a parent who's using it with their kid, what can they do to prevent an asthma attack or something like that after they've played the game, or what do they do after they figure out that they might have an attack in a week or whatever it is?
Right. So do you want to know more about like what's inside this, or like the end result for this, or?
Well, what happens after they use that?
Okay.
I guess.
So after you use this, we spit out a percentage of where you are compared to where you should be for your age, height, gender, ethnicity. So for instance, if I blow in this is actually an example from one of the kids. She blew into our device, and after playing the game, she was at a 74%. Her mom asked her to take medication Even though she was feeling fine, like before the test, she said she had no chest tightness whatsoever. She took her inhaler, and after a couple of minutes, like 10 to 15 minutes, she redid the test. And when she did that, she was back up at a 99%. So that was an example of like a case where the kid was feeling completely fine, but then took medication, took that action, and recovered back to the green zone.
Questions from over here? You all are very quiet. I am curious to know if somebody has an idea here, what would be the best way for somebody to kind of approach you or see if you would mentor them or something like that?
You can just email me. My email is charvi@knox.co.
So far, until you change
Yes,
it.
but it'll probably redirect to that other domain.
If there are no more questions, I know that, oh, one more question, forgive me.
It's not a follow-up though, but how did you guys end up at Pier 9? Did Autodesk put you guys there, or did you guys get in contact with them, or is it completely unrelated?
They're related in some ways. So our investors are Bolt Venture Capital, and their LP, their limited partner, and their investor is Autodesk. So they share the same space. And so our office space is actually owned by like both office space is owned by Autodesk, and so that's why we just share that space.
Do you have time for one more?
Yeah.
It's not a follow-up. Thanks. So you talked about how you had to learn CAD modeling all on your own, and I'm curious to know how what skills you had to learn on your own. I'm sure there was a lot of them, but how you went about that.
Like, for instance, none of us even had any experience with web development. I think the key thing about each one of our co-founders is that we're able to, well, I didn't have web development experience. You probably did, but I didn't. So the key thing about us is that we're able to learn things pretty quickly. Like, I learned HTML and CSS in a day and then programmed everything the following day. Same thing for like CAD. One of my friends sat down next to me, showed me how to use SolidWorks, and then I was able to do it in a couple of days after. And then like Hyson he didn't have any iOS dev experience at all. He learned Swift in about a week and then was able to implement a full app within that. So it's just that, I guess we just learn quickly.
I thank you for helping us learn so much quickly as well. I know that you'll be around, maybe Hyson will actually be around also if students want to come up for one-off questions. If you haven't voted, go out and vote, and it's a historic day no matter what happens. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.